Chapter 31 Padma. You are listening at Mtlnovel Aud. To be honest, when I first saw that big guy, I thought we were going to die. Padma hugged Hermione's arm and said sincerely, "Hermione, you are so brave." Hermione blushed and said, "I had no other ideas at that time. All I could think about was the levitating spell. I mean, I'm really lucky. I've only made textbooks levitate before." "Brother, your slide spell is so wonderful." Michael waved his wand and gestured, "The slide is mediocre. You must teach me the next time you study in self-study." "No problem." Vader turned around and said, "Harry, don't pay attention to Professor Snape's comments. Using a bucket is a good idea. On the contrary, a normal spell cast on a troll is like being bitten by a mosquito. It's almost like a bite. No wonder Michael's petrification spell didn't work before. None of you used spells to attack the trolls directly afterwards." Harry thought and said, "But I don't seem to have seen the one you used in standard spells, elementary." "2 spells. Vade has already learned standard spells, level 3 by himself in his spell class," Michael said proudly, "and he spent all day in the library and study room, and he learned more spells than all of us. There are so many people combined, even though the school year has only been open for 2 months. Harry suddenly felt a little ashamed and inferior. If Ron, Michael or even Malfoy had mastered more spells than him, he could comfort himself by saying that it was because they had learned them at home. But he knew that neither Vader nor Hermione had ever been exposed to magic before entering school, but now they were the best students among the freshmen. He couldn't help but wonder, was he too slack in his studies? Seeing a few people talking and laughing, even Harry naturally joined in the conversation. Ron wanted to say something but couldn't get in, so it was very embarrassing to follow behind. Soon they reached a fork in the road and they separated. Harry, Hermione and Ron walked towards the Gryffindor Tower. Without Michael and the others to make jokes, the atmosphere among the 3 of them immediately became tense. Without looking at anyone, they quickened their pace and hurried back to the lounge. On the way back to Ravenclaw Tower, Padma pretended to be casual, looked at the road ahead, and said, "Vade, can I also learn that spell with a mediocre slide? It seems very interesting." "Of course." Wade said, "There is no class tomorrow morning, so I can teach you." "Well, it might not be convenient in the lounge, I heard." Padma glanced at Michael quickly and said, "Do you have a place dedicated to practicing spells?" After all, she was only 11 years old. Although she had tried hard to make a roundabout request, the hint should not be too obvious. Vader understood. He thought for a moment and said, "I need to seek other people's opinions, but I think they won't refuse your joining." "Of course, welcome," Michael said with a smile. "That's great." Padma couldn't help but jump a little, then blushed. She pretended to be steady, straightened her clothes, and said, "I'm honored." Outside the lounge door, the eagle-shaped door knocker asked, "O, T, T, F, F, S, S, E, N, what is the next letter?" Michael is the kind of Ravenclaw who is not very good at guessing riddles. He held his chin and pretended to think, but gave up decisively after 3 seconds and asked, "What do you think it is, Vader?" "It's a T," Padma said. "Correct answer," said the knocker in a chant, and opened the door. "Why is it T?" Michael was still asking when he entered the door. "Is it the T of troll? This door knocker also knows that we defeated the troll today." He winked and exaggerated, and Padma couldn't help laughing. "It says the first letters of 1 to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The common room was packed with people. It seemed like all the Ravenclaws were here, and there were several long tables next to the fireplace filled with food and drink. The students spent their second Halloween here, and it was even better than in the auditorium, because there were no professors here to keep an eye on things they weren't allowed to do. Wade saw that some usually withdrawn students also chose to stay in the lounge and just sit in the corner. I don't know when the lounge was changed into Halloween costumes. A huge skeleton walked around in the lounge, causing screams from time to time. There were also students wearing skull masks, and the masks occasionally made ghostly noises. Scream. Would you like a bloody lollipop? Terry enthusiastically recommended to Lisa. Wade bypassed the crowded crowd and went directly back to the dormitory. The stench of the troll seemed to still linger on the tip of his nose, and he was not in the mood to eat for the time being. Padma watched his back and asked Michael with some anxiety, "Didn't Vader not have dinner? Why didn't he come to the dinner?" She was worried that it was because she was boring to others that Vader would rather I went back to the dormitory hungry and didn't want to get along with them. Don't worry, it has nothing to do with you. Wade just doesn't like places that are too busy. Michael said casually, focusing on piling food on his plate. Padma breathed a sigh of relief and felt a little hungry. After the two of them had filled their stomachs to 70% to 80%, they had time to continue chatting. By the way, remember to say something good for me in your study group when Wade asks for other people's opinions tomorrow. Padma remembered this and couldn't help but repeatedly reminded him. Okay. Okay. I promise to complete the task. Michael raised his hand and said with a smile. Ask for opinions. Michael knew better than anyone that as long as Wade agreed, others would have no objection at all. Theo and Ryan were both easygoing and could not refuse the candidates proposed by their partners. Neville was submissive, and Michael felt that he had no temper and no opinion. The only one who might be a little difficult to deal with was Hermione, and Padma had just established a good friendship with her. In fact, when Michael proposed that the addition of new members must be approved by everyone, what he actually meant was if Wade doesn't agree, you can't bring others over. The restrictions were on the other 4 people. He knew very well that the SSC looked like a group that helped each other, but in fact, it was Vader who helped them most of the time. The notes organized by Vader made it easier for them to understand the obscure expressions in the books. The way of writing papers taught by Vader allowed them to complete high-quality homework in a short time, and Vader also helped them master various spells quickly and accurately. Anyone who joins this group can feel the benefits in a short time. Gryffindor and Hufflepuff are both enthusiastic guys. If they think this place is good, they may bring their other friends here without saying hello. Maybe they think that bringing more members is contributing to the group. In fact, it just adds trouble to Vader, and the SSC will not last long. Vader will not refuse on the surface, but when there are more and more people and more noise, he will disappear from the umbrella house quietly one day, just like now, staying in a quiet and lonely place with only him. That's why Michael had to set up rules, and then use the rules to restrain the people from the 2 academies from being too enthusiastic, and also use the rules to tactfully reject those who tried to join through him. The only exception was Wade, because he was the center. He could of course decide who he wanted to help. Michael didn't tell anyone about these calculations. At this time, facing Padma's request, he just nodded with a smile, and promised that he would try his best to persuade others. Chapter 32 The Most Correct Decision. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wade returned to the dormitory and found an unexpected visitor here. A house elf wearing a tea towel stood in the middle of the room, staring at him with big gray-green eyes without blinking, which scared him suddenly. Wade almost cast a spell, and only breathed a sigh of relief after seeing who it was. Zoe. Why are you here? House elves usually take it as an honor not to appear in front of their masters, so except for going to the kitchen, Wade has never seen the school's house elves appear in his sight. Zoe twisted her slender fingers, obviously feeling very embarrassed. She said softly, Ved Grey didn't have dinner, and Zoe is a little worried. Zoe knows she shouldn't show up, but she still came. Zoe wants to know if Vid Grey is feeling unwell. I'm fine. Vid half squatted and said, it's just that the trolls are too smelly, and I have no appetite now. Zoe said seriously, but not eating is not good for the body. Vid Grey gave Zoe a gift, and Zoe likes it very much. She also cares about Vid Grey's health and doesn't want him to be hungry. House elves talk very interestingly, whether they are addressing themselves or others. Even when they are face to face, they use the third person. Ved looked at Zoe, who still had a small pumpkin carriage hanging around her waist, and the light in the lantern flickered. Okay. He sighed, please help me get some fruit, okay? Don't make it into jam or pudding, just fresh fruit. I'll eat some fruit after taking a bath and then go to bed. Yes, sir. Zoe nodded happily and disappeared from the room with a pop. When Wade came out of the bathroom with a lot of water vapor on his body, he saw a basket of fruits on the table, apples, pears, bananas, a few strawberries, and a bunch of green grapes, washed clean with water droplets on them. Wade took an apple and took a bite. It was plump and juicy, and he was very moved. In his previous life, his mother insisted on keeping healthy and believed that people should eat 12 kinds of food every day to provide sufficient nutrition to the body. Vegetables and fruits are the top priority, and sometimes they can be different for a month after rebirth. Although the food in Hogwarts is much richer than when he was at home, most of it is barbecue and desserts. There are few kinds of vegetables, and the cooking methods are also very monotonous. Fresh fruits have never appeared on the long table. At this moment, Wade made up his mind. After graduation, he wanted to go to the East to see. Magic is the wings of miracles, but the future is in the East, and in this world, there are also mysterious powers, and maybe you can see more wonderful scenery. Padma's joining SSC was very smooth, and no one raised any objections. After all, this girl is not only smart and generous, but also very beautiful. Her deep eyebrows and eyes are like affectionate ones, which makes Theo and others blush unconsciously. Hermione spent more and more time on studying, because Wade made her feel a lot of pressure. In the most recent Transfiguration class, Wade successfully turned a mouse into a beautiful little teapot, with delicate lines like a handicraft just put on the shelf. Professor McGonagall praised Wade's transfiguration loudly and said that his current level can get an O in the final exam. At the same time, Hermione also knew that Wade's owl brought him a full set of standard spells and intermediate transfiguration from Diagon Alley. Therefore, although Hermione is already the best first-year student in Gryffindor College, she still feels that she is behind in progress. She is irritable in studying every day and has confronted Ron several times. Since she knocked the troll unconscious, Ron has never complained about this or that, let alone said something behind his back. Now Ron is looking forward to Hermione's guidance, because he found that Hermione is right. But Hermione finally corrected her habit of being a teacher. She tried to turn a blind eye to the various violations of school rules by Gryffindors, which improved her popularity in the college. Especially Harry, they were almost friends. Wade could hear Hermione complain almost every day, "I had a whole weekend to do my homework, but I only wrote a title. I didn't know how to get anxious until I had to hand it in," saying something like, "Hermione, please let me copy the homework." "Did you let him copy it?" Wade asked while writing. "No." Hermione wrinkled her nose and said disdainfully, "What's the benefit of copying homework?" "But I promised to help him check it after he finished it." "But Hermione," Padma asked puzzledly, "won't this cause more trouble for you?" Hermione looked at her incredulously. "This is the only way to learn knowledge." The two girls looked at each other, and after a moment, they tacitly skipped this topic. When Padma finished her homework, only Neville was still biting the pen and continuing to work hard. She stuffed the parchment into her schoolbag and walked briskly around the partition wall. To prevent people practicing spells from disturbing students doing homework, Wade recently added a sky blue partition wall to the umbrella room, dividing the room into two areas with a ratio of 1 to 3, and added a silencing spell in the middle. Turning to the other side, there were 2 rows of targets in the classroom. Most of them were very worn out, and the damage could not be restored by the repair spell, but it did not affect their continued use. The entire wall at the end was installed with a mirror. Wade said that this would make it convenient for them to correct their movements at any time. Michael repeatedly set the target on fire with burning flames, and then extinguished it with clear water like a spring. Theo tortured his target with shattered, and repaired, in turn. Hermione cast a dancing spell on a spider, and the spider's slender legs danced wildly in the air. Ryan chanted to a gray mouse in front of him that was looking around, "Petrify all," that the mouse's body suddenly stiffened, with only its tail swaying slightly. After a moment, it rushed out and turned into a small branch in the air with a bang. Petrify spell. This spell is centered on the wrist when drawing a circle, and the turning should be quick and fast. Wade waved his wand, and the branch floated in the air. He used the tip of the wand again, and the branch turned into a mouse again. Petrify all. Wade demonstrated it once, and suddenly the mouse's claws and tail were pressed against its body, as hard as a board, and fear seemed to be revealed in its dark eyes. It fell to the ground with a thud, just like a stone. Wade untied the spell, let Ryan continue to practice, then walked to Padma and asked, "Do you want to learn the slide first, or practice other spells?" Padma stuck out her tongue and said embarrassedly, "Actually I can't even use the repair spell sometimes." That she waited for Wade to show an expression of this is a big trouble, but the other party just tapped the target next to him with his wand, and the wooden target immediately cracked in the middle. Wade said, "Then start with the repair spell, let me see your level first." When Padma raised her wand, her arms were shaking slightly. She suddenly realized that she might have made the best decision since she entered school. She must learn a lot here. Repair as before. Chapter 33 Secret. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The weather has been getting colder and colder recently, but the atmosphere in the school has quietly become hotter, because the Quidditch season has begun. Michael is a loyal Quidditch fan. He even attended the Quidditch World Cup last year. The game lasted for 5 days and 5 nights. Michael talked about 7 times how the Scottish team just missed the victory and how the Canadian team narrowly won the championship. It was also due to his eloquent explanations that even Wade was familiar with many famous teams, such as the Heidelberg Hounds of Germany, the Wrocław Eagles of Bulgaria, the Fitchburg Sparrows of the United States, and the Glory. No more Chudley artillery and more. There are also various Quidditch tricks, such as the eagle head attack formation, Prenton's back technique, etc. But don't look at Michael's knowledge of all kinds of difficult Quidditch tricks and wonderful performances on the field. As soon as he got on the broom, it was like stepping on a landmine. His whole body was tense and cautious, and his speed was only faster than that of a running pony. Be faster, and never rise above 10 meters. Vader had always suspected that even in the second year, when they could bring broomsticks into the school, Michael would have to climb the stairs back to the dormitory, because the height of the Ravenclaw Tower is several times 10 meters high. Because Michael can't help but talk about Quidditch, and the topics Vader neither understands nor is interested in, so he has begun to avoid Michael recently, maybe only during Ravenclaw versus Hutch after Patch's game is over. Michael can become a little more normal. Hermione has also become busier recently, and there are a few more Quidditch-related books on her desk, because Harry is about to participate in the first game in his life and is too nervous to eat all day long. The relationship between the two of them had started to get better recently, and Hermione's way of caring for her friend was to try to find ways to help him in the books. Wade felt that Michael could talk to Hermione more. One of them liked to talk and the other was willing to listen. It was a perfect fit. It's a pity that the time of the two colleges is not exactly the same. Most of the time, it is Vader who is forced to receive the Quidditch match review broadcast. However, there was an addition of Padma recently, and when she and Michael were having a lively chat, Vader was finally able to clear his mind for a while. Hogwarts Castle is a huge complex, and it's easy to find a deserted corner here. Vader found an empty classroom on the 6th floor near the library. There was a small platform outside the classroom window. This was Vader's recently discovered secret location. The platform is surrounded by taller buildings. It is hidden and protected from the wind, and it cannot be seen from other windows. The view is still very good. You can see the Quidditch pitch and the Forbidden Forest in the distance. Several small figures were flying above the Quidditch pitch, looking like a few hard-working bees from a distance. Judging from the flash of golden red, it should be the Gryffindor team training. Speaking of which, Hermione told something in the umbrella room yesterday. Wood, the captain of the Gryffindor team, got angry in the lounge recently because he had previously asked the entire academy to keep Harry Potter's joining the team a secret. Wanted to use this as a secret weapon, but now it seems that everyone in the school already knows. Would believe that someone had leaked the secret and stared at the little lions with sharp eyes every day, trying to find the spy. As a result, several girls cried because they were dating people from other colleges. But in fact, this matter is obvious. The Gryffindor team trains 3 times a week and never takes a break no matter how bad the weather is. Whenever this happens, Harry Potter suddenly disappears, only to reappear exhausted when training is over. After a few repetitions, anyone will guess that he has joined the Gryffindor team. What's more, when they fly so high, there are always one or two students with good eyesight who can recognize them. Wade stared at the stadium in the distance for a while. The flying figures felt chaotic, and he didn't see any formations such as figure 8 surround or eagle head attack. He shook his head, not knowing that it was his own vision. If it doesn't work, it's because the players there are not good enough. In comparison, alchemy is much more interesting. The wand was waved, and several small blue fireballs appeared out of thin air, exuding bursts of warmth. Wade took out on the diversity of species he borrowed from the library from his school bag, turned the stone pillar on the platform into a cushion, and sat against the wall to read the book. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly heard footsteps. Wade didn't pay attention at first, but after reading the 2 lines of words, something suddenly clicked in his heart. There was a faint smell of garlic in the air. Before his brain could react, Vader subconsciously cancelled the fire magic and transformation spell, stood up quietly and extremely quickly, and stood close to the wall behind the raised wall tiles. "What are you looking at?" A sharp voice was speaking, very softly, but with a gloomy and irritable feeling, as if it was speaking right next to his ear. Vader almost thought he had seen himself before and said this to himself. Fortunately, when he hesitated for a moment, another timid voice answered. "It's Harry Potter, Master," the voice said. "He's training on the Quidditch pitch with his teammates." Vader immediately understood that this was Quirrell and Voldemort, who was hanging on the back of his head. They were just across the wall from him. He held his breath and subconsciously shrank back, not daring to take a breath. "Harry Potter." Voldemort read the name resentfully and said in a whisper, "Yes, the boy who lived, the savior of the wizarding world. There is only a shadow left in me. When he was wandering around, he stepped on my corpse and became a big star, right? I guess Dumbledore must have high hopes for him." Quirrell's mood was probably similar to Wade's. He shrank and didn't dare to speak. "Kill him. Quirrell." Voldemort ordered coldly, "Kill him when he is the center of attention." But Master, I can't do anything with Dumbledore here. You said you would never attract Dumbledore's attention," Quirrell stammered, looking extremely frightened. "Are you questioning me, Quirrell? How dare you disobey my orders?" Voldemort didn't know what he had done, and Quirrell immediately groaned in pain. "No, I dare not. I obey orders. I obey orders, Master. I obey any of your orders. Please spare me," Quirrell roared, begged, and kept rolling on the ground. But Voldemort did not stop immediately. After the torture continued for a while, Voldemort let him go out of mercy. "Use your brain, idiot." Voldemort finally said in a voice full of malice, "He is going to participate in the Quidditch game, flying at an altitude of 50 meters, even if he falls from the broom, no one will doubt him. A coward who can't speak clearly will just think that he is not good at skills. What's the surprise if a kid like him who doesn't even know a few spells is thrown to death?" Yes, I understand, I will do it," Quirrell said tremblingly as he lay on the ground with tears streaming down his face. After a while, Wade heard the defense against the dark arts professor get up from the ground, tidily arrange his clothes, probably wipe his tears, and then leave with heavy steps. Only then did Wade let out a long breath, and his back was soaked with cold sweat in an instant. Chapter 34 Professor Murray. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thump thump thump, his heart was beating violently, his soaked clothes stuck to his body, and when the cold wind blew, the chill penetrated his bones. This is the closest Vader has come to death since his rebirth, although in the plot, the first-grade Harry Potter can easily deal with the pendant version of Voldemort as if he is playing a game, but that is because the magic left by his mother is protecting him. If it were the current Vader, even if he mastered 10 times more spells than Harry Potter, he would probably die if Voldemort discovered him, reincarnated as a human being. Vader is not too afraid of death. But he can accept that he died for a great purpose, or to protect the people he loves, but he cannot accept that he died for such a ridiculous reason, because he overheard the villain's secret and being silenced, he died as silently as cannon fodder. Worried that he would encounter Quirrell again after leaving here, Wade hid on this hidden platform for a long time and fell asleep leaning against the wall without realizing it. When he suddenly woke up, he realized that it was already close to early morning. The sky is still very dark, the Quidditch pitch has long been empty. In the huge campus, there is only one adult wizard with silver-white hair walking by the Black Lake, probably a professor, but not Dumbledore, because Dumbledore still has a long hair. White beard. Wade didn't see the man's appearance clearly, but he didn't care, as long as it wasn't Quirrell. He stood up holding on to the wall. He felt lightheaded and his body shook involuntarily, almost losing his balance. Broken. Wade thought to himself and stretched out his hand to touch his forehead. He didn't feel very hot, because the palm of his hand was also surprisingly hot. As he breathed, the hot air burned his nose, giving Wade the illusion that if he placed an egg next to him, he could boil the egg with his own heat. Wade climbed into the empty classroom through the window and dragged his exhausted body to the school doctor's office. Most of the portraits in the corridor were sleeping, but there was also a young red-haired wizard lying idle on the frame in a daze. After seeing Wade, his eyes lit up and he asked curiously, "What's wrong with you? Are you sick? Why don't you go back to the lounge tonight? Madame Pomfrey probably hasn't gotten up yet. Do you need me to wake her up for you?" "Ha, I lied to you. There is no portrait of me in her bedroom. Why don't you talk? Just pay attention to me. I'm bored when I'm awake alone." Vader had no energy to pay attention to him at all, but the red-haired wizard chased him through several frames with determination. He kept chattering and did not feel embarrassed when he received no response. This shows that the original body must be hopeless. Talkative, it wasn't until there was no portrait in the long corridor ahead that the red-haired wizard reluctantly gave up. He also shouted loudly from a distance, "You must have no friends with your personality, right? Come to me when you feel better. I can chat with you." Vader had a burning headache and almost wanted to pry his head open. The wizard's nagging made him even more annoyed and distracted most of his attention. When Vader noticed that there were other people besides himself in the corridor, when there was another footsteps, the sound was already very close to him. Almost just a corner away. Wade suddenly became stiff. He subconsciously wanted to avoid it, but his slow body didn't have time to react. Thumping. Footsteps are approaching. Thumping. The world seemed to shrink in front of my eyes, my vision became blurred, but my hearing remained sharp. Thumping. A figure appeared from behind the corner. "What's wrong with you, kid?" Someone asked him, but Wade's brain was like a rusty gear, and he didn't answer for a while. "Oh, you have a serious fever." The man pushed him gently. "Come with me, kid, follow me over here, luckily my office is nearby." The silver-white hair swayed in front of his eyes, looking a bit like Dumbledore, and Vader lowered his guard. A few minutes later, Vader was holding the empty cup, steam was constantly coming out of his ears, and he looked at the wizard in front of him with dull eyes, which made him look stupid. What suddenly appeared in the corridor was not the Quirrell he was worried about, nor the Dumbledore he thought he was, but a strange wizard. He looked to be at least 80 years old, wearing dark blue robes, with short silver-white hair neatly combed and no beard. It is worth noting that he wears a muggle shirt and suit trousers under his robes. His tie is perfectly tied. It is generally difficult for wizards to do this, and there is a strange gold-rimmed glasses hanging in the breast pocket. At that time, the wizard appeared in the corridor and noticed that Vader was not in good condition, so he took him to the office and took out his own pick-me-up. I have to say that it is much more effective than the potion in the school doctor's office. After drinking it, Wade's groggy head immediately became much clearer. Except for his ears that were still steaming, everything else was fine and he could see his environment clearly. This is a circular room, with more than a dozen large and small magic lamps illuminating the room as bright as day. There are many weird and interesting little things on the shelves and tables. There is a golden hourglass rotating slowly, a dozen small crystal balls are strung on silver wires, and the colorful lights inside light up as if they can breathe. There is a very realistic manner on the cabinet next to it. There is a thumb-sized little man and an even smaller dog living in it. They can even fetch water and cook. There are also some Muggle technological creations in the room, a refrigerator, an oven, a TV, a computer, a washing machine, and even a disassembled car engine. This was truly the strangest room Vader had ever seen. The wizard who brought him was playing with a radio. After a while, a woman's passionate voice came from it. "Dear listeners, busy wizards, good morning. A wonderful day starts with the magic hour. Today your favorite Glenda Chittick is still hosting the show. First of all, let us enjoy Celestina's new song released by Warbeck, You Stole My Pot, But You Can't Get My Heart. Oh, luckily I didn't miss it. This is my favorite radio program. The wizard muttered, turned around and asked with a kind smile, do you feel better, kid? Yes, I'm much better. Thank you for your help, sir. Wade asked cautiously, excuse me, are you? I am Professor of Alchemy, Terence Murray. Professor Murray smiled and said, if you can achieve excellent in charms, transfiguration and ancient runes in the 5th grade OWLS exam, Black, you also need to get good grades in magic defense, herbology, and potions, and you can take my class in the 6th grade. You like alchemy, don't you, kid? He glanced down and saw that a small portion of On the Diversity of Species was sticking out of his bag. He pushed the book back and said, yes, Professor, I am teaching myself alchemy. This content may be a little too early for you. You should start with the basic content, such as the magic phonetic chart. I have memorized all of the magic phonetic chart, sir. There are also magic symbol collection, rune dictionary, and a simple introduction to ancient magic texts. In addition, I have also read Mr. Nick Flamel's Preliminaries of Alchemy and Analytical Alchemy. Professor Murray was stunned. Hogwarts has alchemy courses for 6th years and above, but the author did not find the name of the alchemy professor. The elective requirements for Terence Murray's personality and alchemy courses are set privately by the author. Chapter 35 Professor Murray and Alchemy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Alchemy is closely related to ancient runes, and ancient runes are a very difficult course to learn. In addition to the history of magic, most courses in magic schools focus on practice, but ancient runes must be memorized by rote, characters, shapes, pronunciations, and meanings. Ancient runes are very different from modern languages in all aspects. If you want to master the basics of this course, there is no other way except to recite. And many students who choose to take the ancient rune course, it is rare to memorize all these things until graduation. Fortunately, there is no Ravenclaw student with a bad memory. Even if it is not as good as Hermione, Wade has done special training to strengthen his memory, and his recitation speed is not much slower than Hermione. After 3 months of contact with magic, he relied on his strong memory and his love for magic alchemy to memorize all the books, and strengthened his memory by reciting again and again. Now he will not make mistakes in this regard. After a moment of silence, Professor Murray began to ask questions about the contents of those books, and then took out parchment and a quill pen, randomly asked some ancient magic characters and short sentences, and asked Wade to write them down. More than an hour later, Professor Murray had to admit that the student in front of him, who seemed to him to be a child, did not lie, and he really understood everything he said. Alchemy is one of the most difficult courses in Hogwarts, and Professor Murray's requirements are also very strict. There are less than 10 students who can choose to practice alchemy in each class, and they are all the best in the grade. But Professor Murray dared to say that if he called the 7th grade students he was teaching now, even the best one would make 1 or 2 small mistakes in these questions. Alchemy requires a genius-like sharp imagination and creativity, as well as a more meticulous, rigorous, and meticulous attitude than the gears of a watch. And these 2 qualities often do not exist in one person at the same time. What's more, this is just one. Professor Murray suddenly realized that he knew nothing about the student in front of him. Child, what grade are you in now? The old professor said with a pleasant face. 1st grade, sir. Wade said. Professor Murray was silent again. I remember, Ancient Runes is an elective course for 3rd graders. Yes, sir. Wade said, trying to look calm, not like a peacock showing off with its tail spread out. Professor Murray didn't care whether the student in front of him was mature enough. He just began to recall his 11 years old, and the level when he started to learn alchemy at the age of 16, and the great wizards he knew, such as Dumbledore, such as Grindelwald, such as Voldemort, the level they showed in the 1st grade. Thinking about it, Professor Murray looked at Wade more and more as if he saw an undiscovered treasure. His smile became more and more kind, and he asked softly, "What's your name?" Which college are you from? Wade Gray, Ravenclaw College. Wade looked up and said, he had noticed something from the change in the other party's attitude. Professor Murray asked again, you like alchemy very much, right, Wade? But at this time, his tone was completely different from before. Yes, Professor. Wade's answer was the same as always, this is a very wonderful field, with enough power to change the world. Perhaps I will spend my whole life studying it. As a wizard, what do you think of the technological inventions of Muggles? Professor Murray asked again, this question couldn't be easier. The furnishings in the office were enough to show what kind of answer the professor wanted to hear. But Wade was silent this time. He thought seriously for a long time before saying, Muggle technology is developing rapidly, production tools are constantly innovating, information exchange and communication are becoming more efficient, and the changes to the world are becoming more and more significant. Wizards need to take the initiative to learn, absorb, and integrate, otherwise they will be left behind by the times one day. This is his heartfelt thought, although he yearns for the wonders of magic. Let's compare the real gap between the two sides, wizard communication, OWL, Muggle communication, mobile phones and networks that can be reached instantly, the number of wizards. There are only about 3,000 in the UK, and only a few 100,000 to 1 million in the world. The number of Muggles. There are more than 57 million in the UK alone, and 5.4 billion in the world, and this number will increase to 7 billion in 20 years, and 8 billion in 30 years. Wizards kill, only a few dark wizards can use the killing curse. Muggles kill, Maxim machine guns, incendiary bombs, nuclear bombs, self-propelled artillery, howitzers, intercontinental missiles, and 2-year-old children can also shoot and kill people. The gap between the two sides is so big that in the past era of Muggle ignorance, wizards could only survive by hiding themselves as much as possible. In the future, when technology is becoming more and more powerful, wizards must learn from, get close to, and integrate with the Muggle world, so that they will not be easily swallowed up by the times. In fact, Wade has many more dangerous ideas, but it is not convenient to say them out. He is afraid that if he talks too much, Professor Murray's good impression of him will disappear, and he will be swept into the ranks of the third generation of the Dark Lord. How unfair is that? Professor Murray was very satisfied with just such a general answer. He smiled and said, I teach 6th and 7th grade students every Monday and every Thursday. If you have any questions, you can ask here. Come see me in the office at any time. As long as you maintain your passion for alchemy, I will be happy to give you 2 hours a week to teach you. Professor Murray spoke very reservedly, but the next moment he found a book learning to make magic items from scratch from his collection and lent it to Vader, and set a tutoring time for Thursday. Only then did Wade leave. When going out with the book in his arms, Wade saw the black lake next to the forbidden forest through the window, and suddenly remembered the figure he saw when he woke up in the morning. Apparently, that should be Professor Murray, right? The same silver-white hair. Suddenly, Wade's steps stopped, his scalp suddenly became numb, and goosebumps suddenly appeared. When did he see that person? After arriving, I met Professor Murray. Was there 10 minutes in between? Hateful. The fever was so severe that I lost track of time. Anyway, it shouldn't be too long. If that person was Professor Murray, how could he arrive at Vader's location in just 10 minutes or so? Apparition is prohibited in Hogwarts. Professor Murray's arms and legs are old, and he certainly can't climb stairs very quickly, and he doesn't look like a young boy who can ride a broom. If that person wasn't Professor Murray, or Dumbledore, then who could he be? Is it another professor that Wade doesn't know, or, he thought that maybe he was overthinking it? Harry Potter's first year at school should be a very peaceful year, at least for ordinary students, but the chills still came up one after another. What's the matter, Vader? Professor Murray asked behind him. This voice that sounded kind and gentle before now had an inexplicable and eerie atmosphere. It's nothing. Wade was surprised that his voice was so calm at this time, with a hint of gratitude. I just thought that Professor, fortunately, you passed by and found me this morning. Did you just come back from outside at that time? Of course not. Professor Murray didn't seem to be suspicious. He smiled and explained casually, I usually don't live on campus. I only come to campus through the fireplace when I need to go to class. Oh, the fireplace in my office can be used temporarily. Access to the FLU network, which is authorized by the Ministry of Magic. I just arrived at the office this morning when I heard Griffiths shouting in the corridor, and I met you when I went out. Chapter 36 Griffiths. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The red-haired wizard tapped the frame boredly, and from time to time he poked his head to see what the other portraits were doing. This tower is called the Astronomy Tower by students because they observe stars and take astronomy classes at the top of the tower every week. Even most of the portraits in the corridor are related to astronomy. Most of them were quiet and silent, and no one wanted to chat with him. Suddenly he heard footsteps, and then saw a familiar student walking by, and hurriedly chased after him. Hey, have you recovered from your cold? Murray gave you some medicine, right? That old guy's refreshing medicine is really good. He thought the student would walk away without looking back like before, but he didn't expect that the other student suddenly stopped and looked at him thoughtfully. Your name is Griffiths? Wade asked. That's right. The red-haired wizard nodded happily. Did Murray tell you that? Now he is the only one who occasionally chats with me. Aren't there many portraits here? Wade gestured around. Oh, don't mention it. Griffith said depressedly. Did you see the old man in the portrait diagonally opposite? Wade looked over and saw that he was talking about an old wizard with stars painted on his robe and hat. He was standing in front of a large telescope and looking at the starry sky intently. Griffith said, he has been holding the telescope unchanged for hundreds of years, observing the starry sky that has not changed for hundreds of years in the portrait, and he will only find me annoying. And Shalom, the one wearing glasses, always she was writing calculations on parchment without stopping. In fact, the results of her calculations had been confirmed by Muggle scientists more than 100 years ago, and she was still calculating. Vader saw a thin witch sitting at her desk calculating, and even after hearing Griffith's words, she did not stop. And those children over there who are stargazing, have you seen it? They are just a bunch of Cornish goblins. Griffiths complained, when they are not stargazing or sleeping, they must be making trouble everywhere, knocking over Old Man Star's telescope, tearing Shalom's parchment, or pulling my hair, spilling ink on my robes. I've had enough. Griffith sighed lonely and helplessly. Even though Wade was in a bad mood, he was still amused by him, and the gloom, heaviness and doubt in his heart seemed to be dispelled. He asked, how long have you been hanging here? Are you still not used to it? Oh, you don't know, I actually hung it in the foyer on the first floor, surrounded by portraits. I can still watch the little wizards coming and going every day, and occasionally teach them pranks. I don't know how interesting it is. Griffiths regretted said, but later, in order to hang Fosco's portrait, they moved me to the Astronomy Tower. I originally thought it would be good to meet some new friends. I didn't expect it to be so boring here. Can't portraits be visited everywhere? Wade asked. It's possible, but it's very laborious. Most of the time I can only stay in my portrait. Griffith said expectantly, can you move my portrait back to the foyer? Or change it to another just a lively place? I will repay you. Wade did not agree immediately, but said, I have to ask the professor first. As long as they don't object, I will help you change places. Griffiths thought for a while and asked, what if they object? Then I'll secretly help you find another place, but it can't be placed in the foyer, it will be too conspicuous. Wade said. Great. Griffiths almost jumped up with excitement, urging, then go and ask. Go and ask early. Okay. Wade smiled and turned to leave. He originally wanted to ask Griffiths if Professor Murray really came out of his office this morning and if Quirrell came to this place often. But after chatting for a few words, he gave up the idea. The red-haired wizard talked a lot and didn't seem to be able to keep secrets, and he and Professor Murray must have known each other for longer, so why should Vader ask him to keep secrets for himself? It's better to change the portrait to another place first, and then make any plans. Terence Murray finally finished teaching the 7th grade students, then angrily left with his lesson plan under his arm, leaving only a few students looking at each other like quails, as if they had just been through a storm. Baptism, what does the first-year students are better than you mean? Do first graders know what alchemy is? Do you know how to write 0 in runes? They were not convinced, but during Professor Murray's reprimand, no one dared to refute, and could only say with a low eyebrow, yes, yes, you are right. Professor Murray became even more angry. After meeting Vader, he looked at his carefully selected students and became more and more dissatisfied with them. He then looked at the alchemy work they completed last time and became even more dissatisfied. In the end, he kept 5 times the amount of money he usually had. Homework, I still feel that these students have it too easy. Professor Murray returned to his office angrily, and heard an enthusiastic voice from a distance. Did your class go well today, Professor Murray? The little wizards must have learned a lot, right? Faced with a passionate attitude, it is difficult for people to be truly indifferent. Professor Murray smiled unconsciously. Oh, Griffiths. Yeah, who else but me? Griffiths said. Professor Murray couldn't help but stand in the corridor and complain to him about his students. Not only is he not as smart as others, he is not as hardworking as others. Why learn alchemy? It's better to be a decoration in the Ministry of Magic. So you are interested in that little wizard? Griffiths asked with a smile. Lying on the picture frame. Professor Murray was silent for a moment, and suddenly sighed. Griffiths, genius wizards often behave differently from others since childhood. They are talented and attract everyone's attention as soon as they enter school. However, talented people always yearn to learn those difficult and dangerous magics, master more powerful powers, and pursue greater interests, but not many people are willing to settle down and study alchemy. But in my opinion, even if you master the most dangerous forbidden magic in the world, what can you do? Look at those who were once famous. Some fell as quickly as a meteor, some became the notorious Dark Lord, and some had nothing even with such a great reputation. The more powerful they are, the more death and killing they bring to the world. Those who can truly bring changes to the wizarding world and bring happiness to people should its alchemy. Only by constantly learning from muggles, innovating technology, and improving alchemical products can we make the wizarding world develop better and prevent wizards from being wiped out by muggles. But these years, although I have made some achievements and introduced some products invented by muggles into the magical world, I just feel like a baby learning to walk. The harder I try to catch up with the giants in front of me, the more I find that the gap between the two sides is so huge that it makes people despair. This gap is still getting bigger every moment. And what about my students? They only think about inventing some popular magic items and making a lot of money. They only think about this. But that child is different, right? Griffiths suddenly asked. Yes, Professor Murray smiled, although he is only 11 years old. Chapter 37 Quidditch Match. You are listening at Mtlnovel Audio. Wade didn't know that Professor Murray had placed great expectations on him just from a one-sided relationship. He was just happy that he was finally able to get professional guidance after studying alchemy as if he was groping in the dark. After returning to the auditorium, the 4 long tables were empty, with only a few students who had slept in the morning eating breakfast slowly. Today is Sunday, most students will not get up early, and the breakfast time has been extended by half an hour accordingly. Vader casually took 2 sandwiches and saw Westmore, Ravenclaw's 6th-year boy prefect, at the end of the long table, so he walked over and sat next to him. Good morning, West. Morning, Wade. West said lazily, it's rare to see you sleeping in. Wade leaned forward and got closer. West, do you know who the alchemy professor in the school is? Of course, it's Professor Terence Murray. West said, I took his advanced class this year. Why do you ask? Because I am very interested in alchemy, I want to learn about it in advance. Wade did not mention his chance encounter in the morning, but asked, who is Professor Murray? When the freshmen were admitted, I didn't seem to hear anyone mentioned. Of course, Professor Murray is not in school at all times. It is impossible to see him whether it is the freshman orientation or the Halloween dinner. West said matter-of-factly, he is a famous alchemist. It is said that the level of alchemy is second only to, of course, everyone agrees that Nick Flamel is the greatest alchemist of our time. There are at least 5 or 6 people who are called Nick Flamel II, but Professor Murray is not that. A person who pursues fame and reputation really has something. West suddenly came closer, lowered his voice and said yearningly, "Did you know? Professor Murray even has shares in the Nimbus Broomstick Company and Wizard Radio. He is a guest of the famous singer Celestina Warbeck, and also he has cooperated with the Ministries of Magic in various countries and participated in the reconstruction of at least 3 Ministries of Magic. This past Halloween, he participated in the Carcassonne Alchemy Symposium in France. Only the top alchemists received invitations. So for a busy person like him," West returned to normal volume, "it would be great if he could spare time to teach us on time every week. It is impossible for him to live in the school like other professors, and he basically won't. Coming to the school auditorium for dinner is a very wise choice for you to start learning alchemy from now on. This way, you will definitely become famous when you officially study with Professor Murray in the 6th grade, and maybe you will be accepted as a real apprentice by him. Reach the sky in 1 step. How can you reach the sky in 1 step? West's friend Benson said suddenly. He appeared out of nowhere with messy hair and even unwashed toothpaste on his face. He casually grabbed a pie from the table, and without waiting for West's reply, he urged, "Hurry up, if you go late, you won't be able to get a good seat." "Wait a minute." West took out his wand and cast, "Clean up," on him, and then said, "Why are you so anxious? The game between Gryffindor and Slytherin only starts in half an hour. Besides, they are all flying in the air, aren't they the same wherever they sit? How can it be the same? If there are only seats left behind the pillars, we won't be able to see the wonderful scenes. And I don't want to sit with Slytherin." Benson muttered, dragging West and striding towards the court. "Walk," West turned around and greeted, "Well, Vader, you'd better hurry up." Before he could finish speaking, he was pulled out of the auditorium. Only then did Wade realize that the reason why there were so few people in the auditorium was not because many students were sleeping in, but because most of them went to the Quidditch pitch. He had experienced so many things from last night to now that he had completely forgotten that the first Quidditch match was today. After Benson urged West to leave, the few students in the auditorium seemed to realize that time was running out, and they hurried out the door. Vader drank a glass of hot water that appeared in front of him out of thin air, and then walked to the Quidditch pitch. Almost all the students from the school are here, and many of them are holding binoculars in order to see the game clearly. The stands were packed, and the seats were raised into the air one by one. Students from Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff were mixed with Gryffindors, while Slytherins were huddled alone. In the top row, the Gryffindor students hung a huge banner with the letters Potter Must Win flashing in different colors, and someone also drew a vivid lion on it. Players from both teams filed out of the locker rooms, and students in the entire stadium were shouting and applauding. There were only a few hundred people, but they seemed to roar with the momentum of a stadium filled with thousands of people. The players were like NBA stars, accepting the acceptance of their respective colleges. Of encouragement and cheer, Wade climbed to the top of the stands first and quickly found his target, several professors who came to the stadium to watch the game, probably because they didn't want to be crowded with the students. They all gathered in the same area. Especially Professor Snape, who looks like a black crow, is easy to find. So Vader soon saw Quirrell. He was very close to Professor Snape, with a big scarf wrapped around his head, and he was looking intently at Harry Potter, who was riding on his broom, with a look on his pale face. She was blushing, as if she was also infected by the warm atmosphere of the scene. With Madame Hooch's whistle, the players from both teams quickly flew into the sky and turned into small black dots in the blink of an eye. Almost all the students in the stand stood up subconsciously, looking up, trying to identify the players from both teams, and occasionally exclaiming as the battle progressed. Wade squeezed through the crowd with difficulty, listening to the passionate commentary of Gryffindor student Lee Jordan. Flint didn't score. Gryffindor goalkeeper Wood made a beautiful move to break the ball. As the players of the two teams attacked and defended back and forth, Wade had squeezed to the stand where the professors were, and then under the cover of the students on both sides, he quietly stretched out his wand, and then waved it quickly. Quirrell was applauding Gryffindor's goal, smiling with the professors next to him, completely ignoring Snape's dark face not far away. just as he was secretly preparing to cast a spell on Harry Potter's broom, his body suddenly pounced out, rolling uncontrollably along the stands, and even knocked down several students. It looked like Professor Quirrell accidentally fell down because he was too excited while watching the game. Everyone helped them up, and saw Quirrell covering his nose with his hands, and 2 lines of blood were flowing down his nose. "How are you, Professor Quirrell?" Professor Sprout asked with concern. At the same time, Lee Jordan's ecstatic voice sounded. Harry Potter caught the golden snitch. Gryffindor won by 170 points to 20 points. This is a great victory. Great Harry Potter. He defeated the Slytherin team in his first time as a Seeker. Quirrell, with blood all over his face, turned his head suddenly and stared blankly at the Gryffindor team celebrating, completely forgetting to hide his suddenly ugly face. Fortunately, people were cheering and almost no one noticed his change in expression. Almost because Professor Snape, who also had a livid face, was staring at him gloomily. Behind Quirrell, separated by several walls of people, Wade quietly retracted his wand. He took a last look at Quirrell and returned to the castle with the excited students. Chapter 38, Learn, Understand, and Control. You are listening at Mtlnovel Aud. Ever since he overheard the conversation between Quirrell and the pendant version of Voldemort, Vader no longer went into those remote and uninhabited corners. When there are no classes, he spends most of his time in the Umbrella House. Fortunately, Michael's enthusiasm for Quidditch finally subsided, probably because Ravenclaw lost to Hufflepuff in the game and 2 students were injured, which made him feel that Quidditch was not that interesting. During the defense against the Dark Arts course, Vader paid close attention to Quirrell. When facing students, Professor Quirrell is still the timid and pitiful Quirrell. When a naughty student asked about the scene where he fell on the stand, he just said awkwardly and stammered, I didn't pay attention, it seemed, someone pushed me." The students all had expressions of disbelief on their faces. Which student would dare to play a prank on the professor? They all felt that Quirrell must have been too excited to stand still, but they were embarrassed to admit it. Of course, no one would doubt this matter on Wade. He has always been a representative of a good student in everyone's mind. He respects professors, studies seriously, never causes trouble, and is a typical Ravenclaw. After class, Padma quickly packed her school bag and ran over excitedly and asked, "Go to the Umbrella House to do your homework." Quirrell's teaching level is not very good, but his ability to retain homework is almost on par with Professor Snape. Every time he has to write a paper that is more than 1 foot long, even a Ravenclaw student will have a headache, but after Padma studied at the Umbrella House for a period of time, she felt as if she had mastered the code of writing a thesis, and even enjoyed it. Probably because after finishing her homework quickly, her inflated sense of superiority would bring her great happiness when she looked at her classmates who were complaining that they had a lot of homework, it was difficult to write, and they were scratching their heads with worry. Wade saw her chatting with people in the auditorium more than once. "How much homework do you have left?" "Huh. There's so much left to write. I finished writing the paper in only 40 minutes yesterday. It feels pretty simple. Why didn't you even write the beginning? Did you not pay attention to the lecture?" After a few times, everyone stopped talking to her, and Padma always stayed with her sister. But judging from Parvati's expression, the reason why she endured Padma's showing off was to use her homework as a reference. Wade wanted to persuade her not to always be so Versailles, but Michael looked at the smile on Padma's face at the other end of the long table, and then said, "Don't you think she's cute like this? It's like her face is full of it says, 'Am I awesome?' and 'Come and praise me.'" He laughed unconsciously, "Stupid and smart, just like a child." Okay, Vader swallowed what he was about to say. He wondered if his mentality was too old and his thinking was too realistic, so he didn't know how to appreciate the silly cuteness of this little girl. Padma was happily looking forward to going to the Umbrella House, but behind her, Michael was winking at Vader. Vader glanced over there, then turned back and said, "You guys go ahead. I have some questions to ask Professor Flitwick." Michael was overjoyed and gave a thumbs up and then curled it twice to express his gratitude. Padma was a little disappointed. Okay. The two of them left together, and Wade was packing his things and heading to the 7th floor. He was not deliberately creating opportunities for Michael, but he really wanted to see Professor Flitwick for something. Professor Flitwick's office is on the 7th floor. Students usually don't climb up such a high floor, so it's very quiet. In the long corridor, only the portraits murmured from time to time. Speaking of which, Wade had never seen another portrait as active as Griffiths. Most of the portraits in the castle just stretched or turned their heads, and some never saw them leave their portraits. For example, Miss Claudia, Vader came to an oak door with an eagle carved on it. When it saw Vader, it flapped its wings and said as if to itself, "Vade Grey is here to visit." After a moment, it said, "Enter aloud." The oak door slid open and Wade stepped inside. The style of Professor Flitwick's office is exactly the same as that of Ravenclaw Tower. The room is an arched structure, surrounded by 13 windows, which can see Ravenclaw Tower and Owl Tower. The sunlight shines through the colored glass, reflecting colorful light and shadow on the ground. Most of the furniture in the room was mini, just right for Professor Flitwick's height. Only the bookshelf is particularly magnificent. Hundreds of books are stacked from the floor to the ceiling. There are also thick piles of parchment piled on the floor. Most of them are notes compiled by Professor Flitwick himself. He sometimes lends them to others. Wade currently has 2 books in his school bag about his favorite students. "Oh, Vader." Professor Flitwick's voice came from above his head. Vader looked up and saw that the professor was standing on a tall, automatically sliding ladder. The ladder shrunk step by step, and finally turned into a low step, and Professor Flitwick jumped directly from it. He said happily, "I am very satisfied with your paper on the softening curse. Son, do you have any new questions today?" "Yes." Wade took out the notes he had borrowed before and said, "I have finished learning standard spells, level 3, and I would like you to test my level." "No problem, cast a happy spell first." Professor Flitwick said. In the following time, Wade demonstrated more than a dozen spells that the 3rd graders would learn, and all of them were successful at once. Professor Flitwick was so excited that he almost fainted. "Oh, Wade. Oh, Wade. You are definitely a genius," he said repeatedly. "It's only been 3 months. I watched you go from knowing nothing to today's level. The progress is too fast. In this way, you can reach the level of OWLS in less than a year. You will definitely become a great figure in the future." Wade smiled and said, "Professor, I want to continue to borrow textbooks and notes for the 4th grade. Of course. I've been prepared for a long time. I know you will definitely finish it before the Christmas holiday." Professor Flitwick waved his wand, and several books flew over from the table. It was the standard spells, 4th grade that Professor Flitwick had used before, as well as the materials he consulted for teaching students, the lesson plans he prepared, and the excellent papers left by previous students. Professor Flitwick has been teaching at Hogwarts for decades, and has long reached the state of only needing to bring a wand to class, but he has never thrown away the things he wrote in the early years. Instead, he carefully sorted them out and kept them, and he is still repairing them intermittently until now. Wade's eyes can help him learn a spell quickly. But the same fire spell can only be used by some people to light a cigarette, some people can light a bonfire, and some people can burn a city. This is the difference in power. In terms of control, some people's fire spells will inexplicably blow themselves up, while others can control the flames after they are lit, allowing them to deform, burn, and extinguish at will. The reason for this difference is not only the difference in magic power, but also the wizard's understanding of the essence of the spell. Wade's eyes let him learn. Textbooks and books in the library are all for him to understand, but Professor Flitwick's information here allows him to touch the line of control. Chapter 39 Griffiths' Farewell Ceremony. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After borrowing the book, Wade continued to ask questions. The content of charms was explained in detail in Professor Flitwick's book, so he asked about spells related to defense against the dark arts, such as the Iron Armor Curse and the Disarming Curse, obstacle spells, etc. Everyone knows what level the defense against the dark arts course at Hogwarts is. Professor Flitwick did not let him ask Quirrell for advice. Instead, he answered the question in detail and patiently, and finally lent him a few more books. Wade was very grateful. there is only one wizarding school in the UK, Hogwarts. The professors in the school do not examine KPIs, nor publicly compare pass rates and excellence rates, nor do they conduct year-end assessments or performance appraisals. The professors in the school are really all there are those who teach according to their conscience, some are serious and responsible, some are just dawdling around all day, and some are just taking whatever classes they want according to their moods, completely ignoring the fact that the students have to take the wizard level exam. After asking the question, Wade remembered Griffiths' commission and asked, "Professor, there is a portrait complaining that his current place is too deserted, and he wants me to help him move to the lively foyer. Is that okay?" Professor Flitwick asked, "Is it a portrait of someone with a position?" Some portraits in Hogwarts serve as guards, such as the portrait of the fat lady outside the Gryffindor common room, which naturally cannot be moved easily. Wade thought for a while, probably not. He said that he was originally in the foyer, but later moved to the astronomy tower to make room for other portraits. "Oh, I know who you are talking about." Professor Flitwick smiled. The reason why Griffiths was moved out was mainly because many portraits complained that he affected their sleep and was an instigator. He played a prank on the Ministry of Magic officials who came to inspect the school. The principal and professor at the time thought he should be taught a lesson, so they moved him to the most deserted place in the school. "What about his request?" Wade asked tentatively. "It's not a sin to like liveliness," Professor Flitwick said tolerantly. "As long as he promises not to encourage Peeves to cause trouble again, you can change his place. But I'm afraid it won't work in the entrance hall. Many of the portraits in the entrance hall are in line. Griffiths has an opinion." "Oh, okay. But I really don't understand why they don't like pranks. Pranks can bring a lot of joy to people." While Griffiths defended himself, he quickly moved back and forth between the several portraits around him. "Hey, old man, I'm leaving now. Shalom, I'd be happy if you wrote to me while you were doing your calculations, though I don't know if I'll get it. Barry, and dear Francisco, thank you for your hospitality, this is a return gift." After taking off the portrait, Vader watched helplessly as Griffiths turned the old stargazer's telescope 180 degrees, snatched away the quill and ink from the spectacled witch, and finally poured the ink on a bear. On the child's head, a quill was inserted into the nostrils of another naughty child. After provoking all the portraits, he quickly rushed back to his own portrait and loudly urged Wade, "Go. Go." But why do portraits care about spatial distance? Although Vader had already left the corridor with the portraits in his arms, the characters in the portrait still chased into Griffith's territory, held down the red-haired wizard and beat him up. The spectacled witch was so furious for the first time that she kicked Griffiths hard with her feet and screamed, "Do you know how long I have been counting? How long have I been counting?" The naughty children seemed to use Griffiths as a trampoline, jumping up and down on him and shouting loudly. The old stargazing man finally caught up and hammered him twice with all his strength. Then he seemed to have reached his waist. He held on to his waist and went back with a look of pain on his face. Vader naturally cannot interfere with the fight between the people in the portrait. After everyone dispersed, he looked at Griffiths, who looked like a puddle of mud, and asked helplessly, "You are about to leave, and why are you getting such a beating?" You don't understand." Griffiths turned over with the footprints on his forehead, lying on the grass in the valley, laughing happily. "Isn't this the best farewell ceremony?" Vader really didn't understand. Griffith put his hands behind his head, looked at the sky and said, "I don't want to leave quietly, so it may take a long time for them to realize. The red-haired guy seems to be missing. I don't want it either. There will be sadness and tears when saying goodbye, there will be a lot of fights, and everyone will be happy at the end. Isn't that great?" Vader thought for a moment. "So, everyone has achieved happiness, only your injured world has achieved it, is that right?" Griffiths was stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing. "Wade, it turns out you know humor too." As he smiled, the messy scene in the portrait slowly recovered, the footprints on Griffiths' body disappeared, the torn robe was restored, the trampled flowers and grass straightened up, and the broken branches on the tree grew back. Only the bruises on his face had not completely disappeared. "Griffith, you must be a Gryffindor yourself, right?" Wade asked while hanging the portrait on the wall. "Of course. You can tell it at a glance, right?" Griffiths picked up the frame and tried to look around. What is this place? You can't go back to the foyer. This is the only way from the auditorium to the library. Almost all students pass by here every day. Your request should be met. Wade said. Oh, not bad, not bad. Griffiths was very satisfied. In the corridor, some portraits quietly observed this newcomer, and some even gathered together to whisper. Hermione happened to pass by with a pile of books, and there were two familiar people beside her, Harry and Ron. Several people probably just came back from the library and were arguing in a low voice. I bet my flying broom that it must be Snape who let the troll in. He wanted to steal the things guarded by the three-headed dog. Harry said with bated breath. No, he won't. Hermione said angrily, you can't make malicious assumptions about the school's professors. Hermione, to be honest, you always think that the teachers in the school are saints. Ron said impatiently, but I said, I saw it with my own eyes. When the troll appeared, I went to find you, and I saw Snape sneaking upstairs with my own eyes. Harry also saw Snape's leg bitten and bleeding. Why do you ignore these facts and believe him just because he is a professor? I believe him not only because he is a professor at the school, but also because of Dumbledore. If he was a bad guy, Dumbledore would not have been able to see it for more than 10 years. Hermione strode angrily, no longer wanting to argue with them. She shouted, Hey, Wade, are you going to study? Let's go together. Okay. Hermione's attitude made people dare not refuse at all. Wade nodded at Harry and Ron, turned around and left with Hermione. Unreasonable, isn't it? Ron frowned and said, Can't Dumbledore be deceived by Snape? Even Merlin was deceived sometimes. Harry nodded silently, he always believed that Snape was the bad guy. Good afternoon, students. An enthusiastic voice came from the wall. You are all Gryffindors, right? I am also a Gryffindor. I am Griffiths, what about you? Ron said, he is Harry Potter, I am Ron Weasley. I don't think we have seen you before. Yes, because I just moved here today. Griffiths recalled, Weasley and Potter, I seem to have known wizards with this surname before, they should be your ancestors, right? Really? Even Harry became interested now, and the two temporarily forgot the previous topic and chatted with the portraits on the wall. Chapter 40 The Weasleys. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In addition to spells and transfiguration, Wade spent the most time on alchemy. While learning alchemy, he was also constantly deepening his understanding of several courses. The book Learning to Make Magical Items from Scratch that Professor Murray lent him was completely different from other alchemy books. There was almost no boring history and theory, and there was no extensive writing on the relationship between the four elements. Instead, it started from the first line of words and talked about how to make various magic items, from the common automatic ink-filling feather pen, moving photos, flying brooms, and howlers, to the pensieve, magic mirror, invisible cloak, and guardian armor that few people could own. Almost all the magic items Wade had seen or heard of could be found in the book. It even mentioned the sorting hat and the time converter, but the latter only had some guesses, but no specific manufacturing process, and the magic items mentioned above could not be made by reading books, just like people who don't understand electricity or programming can't make a computer even if they have the full set of manufacturing processes. The complexity and danger of magic items far exceeds that of computers. Without the corresponding basic knowledge, even the simplest steps cannot be understood. Wade studied with Professor Murray for several weeks, and listened to his comments on the homework and works of the 6th and 7th grade students every time. He also helped Professor Murray make a teaching aid for his class as an assistant. After a period of training, Professor Murray suggested that he could try to make the simplest magic items by himself. As long as 3 or 5 spells are properly matched, some wonderful effects can be produced, such as the automatic ink-filling feather pen and the howling letter. Some ideas popped up in Wade's mind, such as he could let the feather pen automatically change the color of the ink when writing, or add the function of measuring the distance on the glasses, or make a dancing puppet. Almost at the same time as the association, the manufacturing spell and specific steps were generated in his mind. The spells and magic runes to be used are very basic, he has completely mastered them, and he should be able to succeed after practicing a few times at most. Wade has such confidence, but is he really going to do this? In this case, what is the difference between his work and those student works that Professor Murray called garbage? They are all just copying others' ideas, completing the homework perfunctorily, but the work has little value. This was Wade's first alchemy work. He didn't want to be so casual, nor did he want to end up in a garbage dump after handing in his homework. At night, Wade's mind was full of thoughts, and he never fell into a dream. Between half asleep and half awake, he suddenly heard a rustling sound. Wade sat up from the bed, took out his wand and waved it, and the oil lamp in the dormitory was lit, quietly emitting orange-yellow light. It was very quiet inside and outside the dormitory, and there was a slight sound outside the window. Wade put on his clothes and got out of bed, walked to the window, and then he found that it was snowing outside. The goose feather snow fell, and the whole castle was shrouded in pure white. The thick snow covered all the messy things, and there was an extremely quiet and empty feeling. Wade's mind flashed, and he suddenly thought of what he was going to do. When this idea came up, all other ideas seemed so fancy and superficial. He returned to bed in a good mood and had a deep dream until dawn. Wade originally thought that he had already done something outrageous by throwing Quirrell and making his face bleed, but he didn't expect that this was nothing at all, because the Weasley twins soon did something even more heart-pounding. They cast a spell on several snowballs, letting them chase Quirrell around and finally hit him on the back of the head. Professor McGonagall was furious, and rushed out of the hall directly, deducting a full 30 points from the twins, that is, her own college. They were also punished with a month of detention, half a month before the Christmas holiday, and another half a month after the holiday. The Weasley twins pretended to be repentant and apologized seriously, but as soon as they left the professor's sight, they became complacent. "Why are you targeting Quirrell?" Wade asked curiously while standing in the corridor. For someone like him who knew the truth, the two's actions just now were simply pulling teeth from the tiger's mouth, and although the Weasley brothers liked to play pranks, there was no reason for them to provoke the professor. After all, Gryffindors attach great importance to the score of the House Cup, because they will definitely be laughed at by Slytherin if they fall behind in the score, and even if Professor Quirrell deducted 200 points from them just now, no one would say anything. Wade was very surprised. When did they become so ignorant? The Weasleys stared at him for a while, and showed an expression of remembering something. "Ah, you are the library. What's your name?" the two brothers asked together. "Wade Grey, from Ravenclaw College." Wade said. The twins suddenly realized, they had heard this name countless times from their youngest brother Ron. Every time after class with Ravenclaw College, Ron would talk about how a little wizard named Wade in the same grade was appreciated by the professors, and he must be the next Percy. But from what they saw, Wade Grey was completely different from their brother Percy, and like them, he was an alchemy enthusiast, which made him very fond of him. The Weasleys looked at each other, then came over and said, "Aren't you curious? Quirrell always wears that big scarf. No matter how the weather changes, he never takes it off. We went to the kitchen and asked the house elves, and he didn't even ask them to clean the scarf. So there must be some secret hidden under his scarf. No one can know it." Fred Weasley said firmly, "Maybe it was some dark magic weapon that damaged his brain. It could also be an extremely ugly man with diarrhea." George Weasley couldn't help but laugh. "Think about that scene, it must be very funny. Don't bully Professor Quirrell just because he's easy to talk to." Vader politely advised in a Hermione-like tone, "Do you dare to loosen Professor McGonagall's bun? Don't say such scary things, okay?" Fred put his arm around Vader's shoulders with a familiar look, "And I also discovered something strange. Do you know what it is?" "What?" George asked in a flattering tone. "I found out." Fred looked at Vader and said in a long voice, "We have all talked about the suspicion about Quirrell's scarf, but you don't seem to be curious at all." Wade's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly realized that underneath the jovial attitude of the two brothers, there was an extremely keen intuition hidden behind them. His eyes changed slightly, and George noticed it immediately. He raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, "So you know?" Vader crossed his arms, took a step back, and leaned against the wall, squinting at the Weasleys. So, this is an interrogation? George and Fred looked at each other and laughed at the same time. Of course not. You found the answer to the question earlier than we did, so we lost. Fred said seriously. But it's impossible to interrogate or anything. We will find out the answer ourselves. George showed a bright smile.